Hi everybody. I'm going to get started with our review of the first phase of the final project, which is in three parts, and it's going to be over a period of a week and a half. Um, so in this first phase, what you're doing is picking an idea, just like a general concept of the type of space that you're going to be working with, and then developing four different views of that space. So it's a way also, I think, of really showing to yourself how much you've learned in class. At least that's how I look at it. When you start developing these different views of your space, I think I think you'll probably be pretty amazed at how you'll be able to come up with these different viewpoints in and play with the different perspective forms that we've been looking at. Okay, and so that's what we're doing, and then what we're going to be doing with these sketches is then narrowing it down to one viewpoint that you think works best. And what I'll try to do in the critique today is maybe give you some uh, thoughts on which composition seems to be going in a really good direction. And the point of view of the reason we're developing so many different views is that we're just going to hope to get one really good viewpoint. And in thumbnails, that's, the goal really is not that every thumbnail is going to look great, but that you'll have one really, or more, really good direction to go in. It also, I think, is a really good opportunity for you to work out issues that might come up later. And I think this is really true. I mean, it's true really of almost any type of design project, which requires a lot of time, but I think it's especially true of perspective, where um, you can really spend a lot of time, as you may have noticed in class, on a drawing that maybe the original composition wasn't great. Um, and then you put in a lot of time and the shading and all that kind of stuff, and the end result is like, oh, it's okay. But if you had had an opportunity to play with a few different options, like we're doing here, I think that's where you really get an opportunity to find the best direction. Okay, so let's get started. And I think that's all I don't think I had any other announcements other than, oh, welcome back. This is our first critique since we came back. I hope everybody had a really good holiday and a break and had a chance to do some relaxation, or at least doing something different besides schoolwork. Okay, Jessica. All right, so you were doing a house in California in Napa, and it's a house that, yeah, so definitely, if you want to have some indoor and outdoor spaces, I think that's great. Um, a lot of homes, I think, in California tend to be indoor, outdoor types, transitional, where you maybe have space that kind of goes into an outdoor space. So I think that's fine. It's all living space. Um, and let's see here. Yeah, you've got some great views here. Yeah, they all look really good. I don't know if you had a favorite yet. I think they're all really, interesting spaces, and they've got a lot of complexity. And you've got an ellipse. So the requirements are that you do interior space in 1, 2, or 3-point perspective. You have a scaled figure, an ellipse, and I don't think there's any other requirements other than adding some cast shadows. So I may be missing one of them. I'll have to go back and check the requirements, but I think that's it. Ellipse, scale figure. I would say, so I'm sort of looking at I like this space. I like the fact that there's these nice foreground elements coming towards us. I think that looks really good. Same with this one. Um, I like this one too with the seating arrangement here. So I'd probably go with either one of these. I like this one too, although it feels like maybe this foreground is a little emptier, and it's always really nice to have something kind of coming towards us, bringing us into it. But yeah, this looks really good. I think you're definitely ready to pick one to, continue moving forward to the second phase. Amanda, yeah, I like the idea just of a nice sort of inviting interior space with a nice setup of your furniture. Yeah, definitely. I think you've achieved that here. Um, and so I understand what you mean about the one point perspective. I think one point perspective can often be a little challenging. It tends to not be as inviting as 2 point perspective. Which isn't to say that there's anything wrong with using 1 point perspective, but I have just found that in terms of creating a more of a sense of movement and entry into a space that typically 2 point perspective can give you a little bit more of that sense, which is what I think what you're going for. Um, I would say compositionally, I'm sort of leaning towards this one here, number one, and then number four. There's just something about the angles in the space that I think look really good. I like how it's also, there's this really nice sense of bringing it into the foreground. So and just like the video, our assignment video talks about, you can definitely make changes to any of the compositions you're working on. So you might take one and you can make some revisions or blend them together. There's definitely um, it can be very organic, even in terms of changing your concept a little bit as you go through. It's just a starting point. So those are my favorites. Then I might go to this one as a third choice, and then yeah, like you mentioned, the 1 point, I would probably steer clear of that. You've got stale figures, um, got some ellipses on each of them. Yeah, and so your question is, how do you do an ellipse without a grid? You just have to freehand it like you've done, and that's okay. And then once you set it up, on the bigger piece of paper, then you can go and grid it out using the method that we have followed in the class. But I think your ellipses, I think in terms of thumbnails, they look pretty good. This one, I think they all look pretty good and convincing. So I would leave them for now, and then depending upon which one you choose, you can develop them with the gridded method. Yeah. Okay, good. Good work. Ellen. All right, yeah, 3 point perspective I think can be a little challenging for an interior space, um, just because of the nature of being really high or really low. So 2 point perspective I think is a really good choice. Let's see here. Well, automatically I immediately went to this upper left one. I think it's just has a really the space is starting to be developed there quite nicely. Um, And I also like how, you have created this jog where you're coming along and the wall comes out here and then it goes back in space and then we have a doorway. I just think it gives it a little more complexity. I would say that in all of the spaces, something to think about is how maybe you can develop the space a little closer to us. There's a feeling here of everything being a little far away, and that's because everything is sort of set back in the space. So you might sort of think about how you might be able to develop elements a little closer to us, move things a little closer, like maybe have something going on here or here, through the space. You will find, I think, that create when you start developing this later on into a larger scene, what you will find by doing that is that you're going to have more areas to start shading and developing. When things are quite small in the page, that's where I think it gets more challenging to really develop. So think of bigger, larger space, like shapes and spaces in the design, in the composition, and that will, I think, really help a lot. There's some really good examples. If you look at the video for this assignment, you'll notice that the person who's doing the drawings is really trying to kind of bring out the space, to kind of maybe develop things that are happening in closer to the viewer. So that's what I would probably work on, but I think you're going in a really good direction here, so you could, maybe play with the sketches just a little bit more. So let's see, you're going to have an interior space and a fish tank, which is going to be your light source. Okay, good. If there's anything else you want to add into that, maybe explain the story you want to tell just a little bit more. Things like what kind of space it's going to, what is it going to feel like? You can, imagine that maybe who's living in the space, um, how um, how people are going to interact with that space. Anything like that can be really, really helpful as a way of focusing what you're going to be doing in the design. Okay, so I've got a 1 point and then a couple of 2 points here. Okay. Um, yeah, so I think these are a good start. There is a little bit of a sense of them being quite similar in terms of viewpoint. So anything that you can do to change that, even something as simple as, maybe changing where your horizon line is, moving that, into different positions. Um, and then perhaps also, maybe um, bringing the viewer in a little bit more to the space, adding some elements into the foreground. Just like I've been mentioning earlier, that can be just a really wonderful way of developing the space a little bit more, like maybe having like a table right here in your spaces, or something that just kind of pops out at the viewer a little bit more. I think that would be really good. And then maybe just working in your space a little bit more, developing the elements a little bit more clearly. Even though these are thumbnails, I think it's just fine to continue to work with a ruler just to kind of create a little bit more accurate perspective, like these picture planes. These pictures look like they could be going to your vanishing point. So just kind of developing, you can map out um, your grid, your ellipses just a tiny bit more, just to kind of develop those elements, a little bit more detail. Yeah, just kind of continue to develop it a little bit more. These look maybe just a touch rushed. Um, and, these thumbnails definitely do not have to be completely developed, but the more you can sort of expand on them, I think the more that you will have a good basis to work on with your design later on. Okay, so that's what I'd work on. I love the idea of the aquarium. I think that's a really, really cute idea. Um, and yeah, just think about adding a few more details. Tables, chairs, little end tables, lamps, that kind of thing. Thinking about where your light source is going to be and maybe mapping in a few cast shadows really lightly into place, just shading where you want those to be. Okay, Terry, yeah, you can just say a tiny bit more about your idea. Look, let's look at it in just a minute. I bet you already probably have an idea in your thumbnails. But yeah, just describe it a little bit more. You can look at the student samples. There's I think they give you a sense of what's needed. And it's just a way of really focusing what you're going to be doing for the final project. And of course, as I've mentioned before, your concept may change, and that's okay. Yeah, it's fine that you uploaded them at 300 DPI. Um, okay. An outdoor patio. Okay. Yeah, let's just take a look here. Yeah, so to me, this looks like an interior space, kind of a home environment with, some modern elements, um, and living spaces. Yeah, good. Yeah, these look really good. They're simple, yet it looks like you have really thought about the compositions. I really like how you've been working to create elements in the foreground, which I've been talking about before. I love the idea of a pool table. It looks like a pool table, right? That's really cute. Just even something as simple as a little uh, console table popping out into outside of the picture plane really is good in terms of activating the space. So yeah, all of these look really good in terms of um, composition. Which one do I think? I think spatially, so my favorite of these two would be the two on the top. Um, I just like the sense of space. I really like this one, the way it's a little lower down. I think that's just so interesting to just make it a little bit lower, but I also really like the details here and the person, the way this part of the composition comes together and this space over here. Same reasons here too. I like just the sort of the sense of the space in this one. Also how we can look into this other room here That's interesting. I like that too. You know, whenever you have a door, it's an opportunity to just create, even just simply, like for everybody, if you have a doorway, think about just how you can create something very simple beyond it. It doesn't have to be a lot, but just how that space can open up in there. Um, this one too, I like the corner windows. I like the person just kind of at the mirror. I think that's really a creative touch, you know, the sink and the mirror. Um, and this one, I love all of the spaces here. I think it's really creative and just has a really good sense in perspective, demonstrating what we've been learning. The only thing is, like, it feels like this element here is maybe cutting off. It doesn't feel like we can kind of look into the space as much as the other ones. Um, but I think it's still really good. So if you like this one, if you like the pool table, I would go with it. I would just say that these are probably my favorite ones. And as I've mentioned before, the goal at this stage is not to have four compositions that are all going to work. It's just about finding that one or more, but at least one that you can move forward with. Okay, good. Jennifer, all right. Yeah, definitely. This is a case where it really does put into practice all the things that we've been learning. And so, we still have a time left in class. So, if you do feel a little uncomfortable with any of the perspective forms, I would really recommend you just go back to any of the earlier units and just pull up those tutorials, the walkthroughs, and just keep practicing. I do think it takes some time to really get really comfortable with perspective, and so the more you can do that, more time you spend on it, I think the better. Um, okay, so let's see, 1 point perspective. A sitting room, a studying room, or a personal library type of room. Okay, that's a great idea. Uh, yeah. You know what I thought of immediately with that idea of how library shelves are so linear? You could have a whole wall just of shelves and, just draw it in perspective. So it's a really great way to, kind of work on your perspective. Um, Okay. Yeah, yeah, I see what you mean that you may have had a little bit of trouble here with the perspective. I think this is the one that's starting to be the most in perspective. But one thing I'm noticing is that your angles are you're changing your angles a lot in your perspective. I'll show you what I mean here. When you set up each of these thumbnails, I would really set it up just like you would any other drawing. Put a vanishing point in. Get your I'm just going to sort of reset up maybe so that your vanishing point, maybe this wall, I'm just kind of getting it a little closer so I can maybe work with it. Um, it's not going to be quite accurate, but sort of so that you're vanishing, just really sort of set it up so that you've got something to work with. So here's your vanishing point right here. And then, when you do that, you can just set everything in the space according to those two VPs if it's a 2 point vanishing point, right? Because right now what you have is you have everything angled in different directions. It's this one I think this is your 1 point, right? So this is your, let's see here. Yeah, so here's your 1 point right here. So, and then here's your walls. So this one, yeah, so this one's starting to work, I think, in terms of perspective. But just make sure that like everything, like this chair here, rather than angling it, keep it in 1 point perspective as well, right? It's just like we did back in 1 point perspective where you're gonna just take your chair and have it facing us. So I'm just gonna, cube in a shape here. So you would just kind of cube it in and let it go this way, back to your vanishing point, right? When you have, our assignment tutorial for this assignment actually has a few things starting to angle out. But I think that's a little more advanced, creating that what you're essentially doing then is creating multiple vanishing points. So I would just stick to making things really just, if we look at, I'm going to just pull up, let's see here, who do we have? Um, Yeah, like if we look at, so this is, Terry's here is just working, keeping everything in line with the vanishing points that just the existing vanishing points. So I would recommend doing that with yours. But the main thing is, I think you want to make sure that you're setting up every every composition with little mini horizons and vanishing points. Like make each of these thumbnails an accurate representation of a 1 point or 2 point drawing. Okay, so set it all up rather than free forming it, which is maybe looks like what happened here. Okay, so just spend a little time doing it. It may take you a little bit longer, but that's okay. I think it's really important to get this set up correctly at this point. Otherwise, I just think all of these compositions, they're interesting and creative. It's just a matter of making them more accurate. Tyrande. All right. Yeah, so for your uh, thumbnails, just say a little bit more about what your goal is for the thumbnails. Take a look at the student samples for writing the statement, and just fill this out a little bit more, what you want to be doing with it. Um, and that is really going to help guide you with the entire process. Okay, to me it looks like you've got kind of like a, let's see if I can get this zoomed in down a little bit. Kind of a homey, like living space. Got a chaise longue right here. Some looks like windows or artwork. Yeah, that's good. An ellipse. Now you just want to make sure you've got some scaled figures in here as well. Um, but yeah, I like all of your ideas. Though you've got a 1 point here. I would say, so I would probably pick maybe either this one or this one. What I like about this one is I really like that you have a element that's coming towards us outside of the picture plane, which I think looks really good. This one down here too. I like that with the bowl of fruit, which is interesting. So this could be another option too. I like the complexity of the space. And yeah, I like elements in here too. I like what's happening back here, but it feels a little empty right here. So in a way, I sort of think about like always sort of putting elements in the, foreground, background, middle ground to distribute the space. But yeah, I think this will be good. This will look good. The thing to keep in, you didn't need to do any shading for this other than just to indicate the light source, which it looks like you're starting to do in places. Um, so I think the main thing is adding a scale figure and then just choosing one of these. And for everybody, when you start to set up your drawings, in the next assignment, make sure you're really setting it up just like exactly how we've been working on doing it with your horizon line, vanishing points, really accurate um, perspective. And, I just, rounded elements are so fun to work with. But I would really recommend, unless you're really confident about it, which I think you're probably getting there, but maybe not quite there yet, stick with really geometric elements like this sofa here. Um, and maybe you could add like, yes, like some fluffy pillows or something where you can get a little bit of that softness or curves in because they're a lot easier to draw than a big piece of furniture. So I would just probably recommend sticking with that and keeping your whimsical elements to, things like, yeah, like your plants and, drapery and that kind of thing, which is a lot easier to handle. Norman. Oh, that's a really interesting idea. So you're going to draw out a story about your friend who feels all alone in an empty house. Okay, I love that idea. It really kind of gives you a very strong focus. Yeah, nice job. Um, okay, so you wanted to change the to go with the different perspectives, 1, 2, and 3. Great, I like that idea. Oh yeah, yeah, these are beautiful. Yeah, I really like these. I like the sort of the lone person, the scaled figure, and ellipses. Yeah, these are all beautiful. This one's the composition of this is very nice with all of the elements that are coming out, that like the whole space is designed. The very, yeah, I like, and this one's beautiful too. I really like this one. And the space going beyond looks really good. And and this one is interesting because this definitely shows sort of a sense of isolation by putting everything into the corner, which I, and it's a really cute little space in here too. But just for the sake of composition, I really like these top two. I think they look really good. I'd probably be inclined to go with one of these just because there's everything seems to be quite developed. Even though the ones on the bottom do give a sense of isolation, but sometimes you just have to compromise a little bit for the sake of a good composition. Oh, I like this too, what's happening on the ceiling. Okay, nice job. And all right, everybody. So let me know if you have any other questions. Otherwise, I will see you in the next group critique.